Good morning, everyone. This is Mark Fowler, and this is Always Creating Value podcast. These happen once a month, on the second Wednesday of every month, and we focus on individuals who we believe add value not only to their businesses but to their communities and their career, and those people who help them, every day and as well. I'm the president of Stowe Management Corporation. We're a business reengineering firm that assists businesses in the small to medium-sized arena. We also work with CPA firms, and I am a CPA. And, and our guest, David Cieslak, is also a CPA. We try to reach out to individuals that we believe that can, as we talk to them, like we talked today, we will be talking to David today about the kinds of things that motivate them in creating value in just about every day. That's what always creating value means to us. Now, I've been reengineering companies for more than I would like to admit, but we often think about businesses when you're re-engineering them, that you're cutting costs and you're firing people and you're raising money, and these are the kinds of things that make the difference. But in reality, what makes the difference, ultimate difference, is tapping into the business itself and its potential to create value, as well as the individuals, from the owners down to the janitor, who can also add value in all kinds of different ways. And so when we come to meet with companies like that, we have to take our time a bit to tap in and come alongside the individuals to help them realize that, even though you may have a challenge, you also may be being very successful and worrying about whether you're going to continue to be successful. Well, one of the ways is to make sure you tap into all the value propositions, including your customers. Your customers are sometimes the best motivational points that you can have in developing your business. Today, David Cieslak joins us. I've known David for how long, David? I don't quite remember.
Boy, it's over 20, maybe closer to 30 years. So I'm sure it's north of 25. Yep.
Yeah, we've both been involved with CalCPA leadership forever. David is the vice president and cloud officer of eSolutions. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to let David expand on when he does, but from the CPA world, David is known almost worldwide. He's very involved in CalCPA. He's very involved with the AICPA, and he and I both share the computer area. But David is probably the big guy in town, the big guy in the country. So, David, please introduce yourself. Let's talk a little about some of the things you've done, and then we'll get into the questions about creating value, so that we can help others be able to step into value creation themselves.
Yeah, certainly, Mark. Thank you. And as you I think just shared ever so briefly there, CPA by background, got my start at Pricewaterhouse a very long time ago. And wasn't much long, after I kind of left, kind of the large firm format, worked in private industry for just a bit, but ultimately then said, what, I really, it was, truly enjoyable, truly energizing for me when I had an opportunity to work directly with organizations, with clients that wanted you to be there versus they needed you to be there to, kind of check a box, satisfy some kind of audit requirement. So I looked at it and I said, what, I really want to, have a very different kind of relationship. I want to, really true to form for this podcast, bring value, and, have a, kind of a more, energizing relationship, with clientele. So started our own firm, did that for over 25 years, and then recently merged in with RKL eSolutions, and that's where I'm at today. My role is a Chief Cloud Officer. It's everybody said, "Wow, where did you come? Where does that title come from?" I said, "I just made it up." But really, it dovetails perfectly with how I spend my day, which is trying to help our clients move from what all of us have really been working with for the last 20 to 30 years, which is the legacy on-premise based applications to cloud-based, alternative SaaS multi-tenant solutions. And so really, I look at it and I say, you know what, the platform change is so remarkable in terms of what it can do for an organization. So really, I like to think of it this way. I spend my day solving puzzles and working with customers in that capacity.
Well, one of the things that that you do so well, and one of the reasons why I'd been thinking about you for a long time in doing this, but you're Inspector Gadget persona, I guess is the best way to say that. Obviously we all think of Inspector Clouseau when when you think of Inspector Gadget.
I have my days.
And he was in the clouds too,
Yeah.
so, but you've developed a whole persona in being able to do presentations. As a matter of fact, you did one for our LA MAP committee in December, and you're going to do it again in this coming December. I mean, that whole process in itself is very imaginative. It's very creative and amazingly informative. How did you start that?
So, I mean, I started, I guess, teaching, as it were, back in the early days of, the PC, the West Side Technology User Group for CalCPA.
Oh boy.
I'm not sure if somebody missed a meeting or they were looking for somebody to, stand up and give a few comments on, the latest version of Windows or, I kind of got my start, really kind of speaking to what I thought was really interesting, helpful, productive, technology, in a very small format. And then I think over time, it just became, something that not only did I really enjoy, but I think folks got a lot out of. I mean, they always communicated that helped them, in a decision-making process and, kind of where they would go next. But I always looked at it and said, if I were sitting in the room, if I were sitting in the audience, what would I want to hear? And what would help me in my day job and help me be more efficient, more effective. And that's always, and I've never lost that mindset. I will tell you to this day, when I sit down and I pull together my Inspector Gadget materials each year, and I do start over every single year. I start from a blank slide deck and I start over, just because everything's moving so fast. I want to make certain I have the right perspective on what's going on. And I don't think by dragging, last year's material forward, you can do that. So I really try to take a fresh cut at it every single year. But each time I say, if I were sitting in the audience, what would make this the best 30, 50, 100-minute session? Because, if we're going to spend time together, I want it to be, absolutely valuable for them.
Well, one of the things about, I say, I'm going to say the data processing, but, it's interesting how we fall over words that we had, 40 years ago, data processing, computers. We don't even think about them as computers anymore. They're just part of us. They're our phones, whatever. But the whole process on, developing the computer processes has been very creative in itself. I mean, we've had to adapt so many times. And, you show that in those in Inspector Gadget presentations, especially if you see them year after year, they evolve, and the technology that you present evolves as well. And I thought your presentation last time was exceptional, because you tapped into that creativity even more. You want to explain, something about creativity, because people sometimes think computers, black, white, it's a binary system, but in reality, those of us around it and using it and those creating it are all really in a creative process together.
Yeah. So, I look at it this way: whether it's tools in a toolbox, paintbrushes in an easel, or whatever it is you have, those are just a mechanism that are going to help you go from point A to point B. And from a compute perspective, the tools have changed dramatically over the years. I mean, absolutely dramatically. And anytime I reflect back of the original PC, and then local area networking, and binding, network adapter software to a boot disk, and you're just going, holy moly, I've been through so much, and you learn so much along the way. But, at each one of those kind of points in time, it's just tools in your toolbox. And so it's understanding those tools. It's what you do with those tools that ultimately then, is it helping you work more efficiently and effectively? Is it something that, you're just wasting a lot of time on? And so, I really look at it and I say, it's just, but to me, it's just like education. Education's a tool in your toolbox too. It's up to you what you do with it. And so every single day I look at it and I say, my motivation is how can I help, our client base, as well as, even within my own context of my own day job. I want to work smarter, better every day. And thinking about what I have in front of me, how can I leverage that, to be more efficient, more effective?
Well, you couldn't get a better definition of someone who's always creating value, who's thinking like that. It's you must, I don't know about you. I mean, I write a lot. I speak nowhere near as much as you speak, but we wake up in the morning, or I make up in the morning, and I'll have snippets of information that is gotta be put someplace, and it's something I've got to learn or something I've got to talk about. It sounds like you're kind of right on the same track there, that you wake up in the morning and before breakfast, you already wrote an article, or you've put together a presentation.
And I recognize there's a fine line between, being, kind of passionate, engaged, and being tortured by it, so I always look at it and say, so I'm always mindful, I'm always aware, but again, to me, it's deeply satisfying when you, find, when you discover something, you learn something, and over time, I think you just do enough reps on this stuff. I think you really start to, you absolutely come to a place where you're able to distinguish between those things that are kind of amusing, maybe even silly, will never really gain traction, versus those things that really have some real potential, and might deserve a much closer look, and keep a watchful eye on it, see if it's going to evolve into something that could be impactful. And so I think about, so I spend a lot of my days thinking about, not only what's here and now, and what are the tools that we should absolutely be, putting in place, advising our clients on, making certain that we're taking full advantage of, but what's just around the next corner. The 12 to 24 month horizon to me is really kind of what I'm, most often kind of, focused on, or spending my time pondering. And what are the developments in terms of what's coming? And that could be anything from, even from a business perspective, as well as from our personal lives. I mean, one of the things that I've spent a fair amount of time kind of focused on in the last few years is just battery and electric motor technology that winds up in electric vehicles. And you say, well, that's what is it? What does that have? Well, it's going to help us all be more responsible citizens, but more importantly, I think there's just some great technology that's really concentrating right now in that space. And so you talk about where's innovation happening. I'm always kind of trying to understand where's the most innovation going on. And I have an opportunity to join a few other colleagues each year to attend the Consumer Electronics Show. And that's where we see a lot of this stuff. And, you see even kind of the theme or the focus of the show change over the years. And so, as I said, I start fresh each year, and even thinking about how that show has evolved over the years, and how is, what I'm seeing in terms of technology, how can we bring that back, into our lives, personal, because let's face it, there's not near as much separation from our personal versus our professional lives. I mean, we're carrying, as you said, the smart mobile device in our pocket all day long, computer in our pocket. We're constantly connected to the internet. We're constantly checking our work email, even after the day is over for many of us. So, it's really about saying, how can we bring about just a better life or lifestyle for each of us? And, technology is just at the core, at the center of all of that.
You said you were in, yeah, I'd just like to go back a little bit back into your Price Waterhouse days, which was, I would assume, more of an accounting perspective. What was a trigger for you or did it just happen, that presentation you did at UCLA? Was that the trigger, or was there other triggers that said to you, I need to be doing something a little more creative, or that, there's more to life than accounting, or, both of us have that issue,
Yeah,
because
right.
I didn't stay in public accounting longer than 8 or 10 years.
Yeah.
But what what happened? What was the
Yeah.
trigger, stimulus?
So I still enjoy accounting. I mean, at the end of the day, I still enjoy the debits and credits. I still speak to controllers, CFOs, accounting managers all day long. That's part of my day job. And so it's really understanding, being able to speak the accounting language. But really, the whole accounting profession, every profession has been altered, dramatically by technology, the introduction of technology and the incorporation of technology into process, into what you do. And so that started literally for me back in the Price Waterhouse days. I don't know if I, showed up late for a meeting, or if somebody said, this guy seems to enjoy this, give it to him. But I remember I was the FAS 13 expert, lease accounting guy. And so we didn't have any, the PC had just come out. There certainly wasn't any software to deal with it. So I had to go back to the head office and use literally a phone and an acoustic coupler, and dial into the mainframe and put in the parameters, lease parameters, and get the printout back so we can incorporate that into the work papers, and saying, here's all the lease information, or the backup for the lease numbers, for in connection with an audit. And I'm going, okay, well, that's interesting. And so I looked at that and go, okay, well, gosh, that was painful. Dialing into mainframes is painful. But really, the IBM PC, as I said, was first coming out. I was always, one who enjoyed kind of tinkering, opening up the hood, kind of learning more about how it worked. And so I was just passionate about learning everything about how, not only how the technology operated, but then thinking from there how to, ultimately leverage that. So the really kind of the genesis, or the impetus for kind of breaking off, after I did Price Waterhouse, as I said, I went in private industry for just a few years. But then when I founded my own firm, it really was to say, what, I really enjoy the technology, and the timing is right. I want to help bring this into small business, small and medium business. And that really was my focus from day one, because I looked at it, I said, I understand it now, or at least understand what's possible. And now I want to help, like I said, make that a reality for our customer base. And so at that point, I guess I jumped on the bus, and I've been along for the ride ever since.
Well, it sounds like your passion, not only to help others, but help yourself, help them as well, to, and people, we as humans need that kind of stuff. I mean, I can imagine that. I remember when I used to design systems. I don't do it any longer. I tend to use it only when we're re-engineering companies. The talent, the experience I had, but the creativity is amazing, because you've got to pull people together, help educate them. How do you use that creativity on a day-to-day basis in inspiring them to be creative themselves?
Well, and so I'm blessed to have just some great people, working, alongside me, that I work with within our organization. But I know that, as we kind of step into each, engagement, each opportunity to kind of connect with customers, we learned a technique, a handful of years ago, and I think it's still one of the best techniques I've ever been introduced to. And it's a technique called, selling with curiosity. And it's really trying to, just understand. So, what are your challenges? How's it impacting the business? And what does an ideal solution potentially look like? And gather that. You got to start by understanding, a perspective. Where are the pain points? How's that really kind of, again, impacting you? And then let's think through, because you've probably already given some thought to, what might be a better path forward. And so you kind of, again, and this is a cycle that you can repeat endlessly, across any business process, anything that you do.
Sorry.
And so, no, all good. And so, that's, kind of the approach we take is, kind of asking those questions, but it's also, it's one of those, rather than being so quick to get in there and solve, make certain you have, a solid understanding of, where the pain points are, where the challenges are. That really has to be, the starting point before you reach into the toolbox and say, I've got a hammer. What do I, what can I hit? You really need to understand, that the matter at hand first.
Yeah, it's very hard for people sometimes, and I appreciate what you're saying, because a lot of times people want to solve problems as opposed to better understanding the lay of the land, or what Mary Parker Follett used to say, the law of the situation. What is the situation? What are the dynamics of going on? And, for me, in the re-engineering world, it's always, how do people see things? What's their perspective? What do they see as opposed to what they, but we as humans have, sort of gotten into this solution based. Everything, if something looks like it's going wrong, we've got to fix it as opposed to understanding it.
Yeah, solutioning.
Do you run how do you deal with that? And I know it's always been a challenge for me, and it's getting worse and worse as time has gone on, because everybody's got an answer from the internet. I know how to do that. Well, did you ever do it? No. Okay, well,
I
so
always
you didn't fail enough,
Yeah,
So,
well, I always used to joke, and this, I think this has been maybe, my just living within the profession and understanding how, maybe accountants, CPAs are wired. I always was concerned that, for many practitioners I worked with, that the perspective was that given a good book and a long weekend, I can do anything. And going, that's not quite the way that works. I mean,
yeah,
there
I
are
understand.
people who live in this stuff all day long who bring experience and, really a lot of history to, wisdom to the conversation. And so it's not just a good book and a long weekend that will help us, conquer all. But you're right. I mean, the internet, today, Internet 2.0, we think of it as the internet, the internet of information. And so 1.0 connected us together. 2.0 is the internet of information. You think of answering any question, from fixing the laundry dryer to a leaky faucet to how I'm getting this error code in my software. And so it's a great resource for information. We could Google or do a web search for virtually anything. And so, and I do like thinking about Internet 3.0. It'll be the internet of value, and kind of the journey toward that that we're all kind of underway on. But like I said, it's not just information, it's wisdom, it's perspective. I always look at it and say, what, when I'm, engaging with our client base, I think it's as important to share, all the things that we can achieve, as well as the things that we're probably not going to be able to, it will do this, it won't do that, because it's the won't part that potentially will continue to impact the business, the process, whatever it is. And so it's important to understand, what we can't do or what's not doable, given, the approach, versus all the great things that we can do. And I think too often we get enamored with, all the can do, and not fully appreciating that, at the end of the day, I got to live with the entire thing. And it's important to understand what's not going to be, possible. But all of this is around process. And I look at this and I say, today, the process, or just, kind of the sequence I described of, what's the challenge, the impact, and the, the ideal solution, as I think about all of that, it's a lather, rinse, repeat kind of exercise we can do around process. So it's a matter of saying, think about each of the things we're doing. Where are the opportunities to be more efficient, more effective? And we're going to have a sense for that, because we're going, oh my gosh, that's just, I do this and it takes way too long, and it's frustrating and it's inaccurate. And gosh, if I could fix any one thing, that would be it. And it's like, well, then let's focus on that process, and let's bring, some discipline to that, and let's cycle through that. Let's look for process improvement. And then incrementally, I say, you don't ever eat the elephant whole. It's one bite at a time. So it's a matter of saying, I want to be in a better place 6 months, a year, 18 months from now. And that's going to happen because we've got, kind of a repeatable process we're stepping through and saying, let's bring improvement. Let's, kind of, and in each step along the way, you're going to free yourself up to focus more strategically and, move away from all that tactical stuff.
Well, it's just a lot of people, not so much back to the solution per se, but the simplicity that people want, as opposed to understanding, one of the things that it's something I learned doing the work, the computer work over the years in the turnaround business that we do, or the crisis management or growth business that we do, is that we make small changes in the beginning, just to see how complicated these things are, as opposed to, oh my God, we got to do all this, And we've found over the years that sometimes those little changes, and I think I'm hearing you say that those little changes get you someplace a lot faster somehow than just trying to grab just grab the whole basket of apples or whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, they add up. It definitely adds up over time. And so it's a matter of saying, look, start somewhere, but start. That's the important part. It's kind of like an exercise program. You're not going to lose it overnight. You're not going to get into great shape overnight, but you got to start, and you got to start somewhere. But the important part is you start. And so you begin a process and you repeat the process. And I think that's, but you mentioned something that I thought it was important, and I said earlier, it's important to understand what a solution won't do, sometimes as importantly as what it will do.
Right.
And it's important to have that, kind of that wisdom, that perspective. Too often, the early days and even today, there's a black box mentality that we can sometimes be victim of. I don't know, all I know is I just click this button and something magically happens. And that was the perspective way back when. I think in many cases today it continues to play out, and it's whether it's I found an answer on the internet, it must be correct because I found it on the internet. And you go, no, that doesn't necessarily mean it's correct. So I think it's important to have to not lose perspective, and to not necessarily just fall victim to that black box mentality, because it's to this day, throughout my career, I've always been kind of wary of, or at least on the lookout for, is that one of those situations where we don't even know what we're doing, we don't understand. So when we go to customers, and I know when you've kind of been through these exercises over the years as well, you start interviewing team members and you talk to them about what they do and their process, and you go back to the conference room, you sit down going, I guess I'm struck by the fact that even within the company, no one knows what the other people are doing here.
Yeah.
It's like, how can this even be possible? Do you guys not sit in the lunchroom together and talk? I mean, does nobody poke their head over the wall and say, what are you working on? Or, how did you, come up with that? So again, I think it's important that, it's not just some mystery, that, there's an understanding of what we're doing and why we're doing it before we go about saying, let's look now to to do this more efficiently. What are the opportunities for automation? You got to have an understanding of what lies beneath.
That's great. I love the one about going back to the conference room and shaking your head. I had one situation years and years ago I never forgot. It really wasn't an IT situation. It was just a manual system. And it had to do with the creativity of the individual, the employee. And whatever it was, I can't remember, but whatever it is, this woman was very, very focused on doing things right, doing things for her boss. And he was a really nice man, but he was very strict and whatever. And so something happened and she missed something. She missed a piece of paper. It was very important. So 20 years later or whatever, 10 years later, it doesn't matter. She's been keeping this log. She, unbeknownst to anybody, she's been keeping this log only because that one mistake. And so, we sat down with her, ultimately we sat down with her and found out what she was doing. But she knew enough about this. I mean, she was a very bright person anyway, but she knew that she didn't want to be wrong again. And she created her own system. And I imagine you've seen the same thing going around when you interview people. They've got, I call it the system in the drawer. It's just in the drawer. There's this side system that somebody has created for themselves. How do you deal with that kind of stuff?
Well, and that's, I mean, and that's maybe a perfect way to describe it because, we go into environments where, again, depending on the size of the business and, Betty bookkeeper or, Adam accountant has been, in this as this, in their role for, 20, 30 years. We started the business and they were here even before the business began and they're still here. And no one ever challenges that individual because they've got some, super tenure in the business, or they've got some, relationship with the business owner, the founder, and they are not to be, we, they're revered. They're, so we don't challenge, what it is, but we still don't know what they do. But we just know that that's, we give that to them, and they take care of it. And again, those are the conversations we find ourselves in, and it is one of those where you're just going, holy cow, there's just so much opportunity to kind of, nothing against the individuals who are doing those, but they've been doing the same thing the same way for so long. And they don't even know what they don't know. And I look at it and I go, that to me is a key piece of, of one of the things, you want to make sure that you're aware of as well is, what do they say? The more you know, the more you figure out you don't know.
Yes, that's an
And
Einstein thing. Yeah, the more you
yeah,
know, the less you know. Yeah.
yeah. And so I look at it and I say, sometimes you speak with people and going, you have no idea what you don't know, do you? And so it's always interesting to find that. And and sometimes even you're the messenger that has to go back to management and saying, well, so here's what I've learned. Your people don't talk, they don't know what they don't know, and they don't know a lot. And then say, but so here are the opportunities to kind of work smarter, better, do different. And
Yeah, and
it's
when
an
you
interesting
deliver that
exercise.
message ultimately back to the employees, you've got to make it in a way that's not
Yes.
making it looking like they've been wrong and whatever. In
No,
many cases, it had nothing to do with them. They couldn't have
no, and
changed it if they liked it or
you
not.
put an optimistic wrapper around it and say, we've got opportunities here to do all sorts of wonderful things. And there's just some great developments that will really benefit the organization. Now you got to make certain that they don't, whoever the team members are, don't become so unnerved to think that they're going to be somehow or another, waylaid, by that. And so I think we always look at it and say it's going to free you up to do more strategic things. And so the notion, and so it's growth without having to add more personnel, or it's basically more strategic alignment of resources, so you move away from the tactical toward strategic. That's the reality. And so, and if anyone is unnerved by that, then the kind of the return on that, or the follow on that, is if you don't, your competitors are. So we can stay in this kind of mindset of we've always done it this way and we'll continue to do it this way, but fully understand, that your risk, your exposure increases every single day, that someone else is going, is not bound by that same kind of legacy, mindset, or that thought process that we're not making change. They're looking at it going, there's opportunity here, and we're gonna come at it with a fresh, set of eyes and a whole new way of doing it. And it's amazing how fast some organizations can find themselves in real trouble from competitors who didn't have any kind of legacy overhead.
Right. The newer you are to the situation, sometimes you see it a lot better than the
Correct.
historical,
Yeah.
historical.
Look what happened with compact computers. I mean, they came in and they didn't have IBM's mainframe business to worry about. They said, we're doing, personal computers. And that's an example from way back when all this got started, but that same mindset exists today. And so you think about agility, you think about pace of change. And to me, that's, one of the things that I always wrestle with is, and I always tell people, I try to be on the bleeding edge so you can be on the leading edge.
Ah,
And so,
I was going to ask the question about the bleeding edge. So thank you very much.
yeah.
So
And I
you're
did.
already there. Okay, good.
I lived there, and I got the cuts to prove it. I'm pretty sure. So you talk about how you wake up each morning. Sometimes it's like, oh, feeling battle scarred from maybe the day before. But no, you look at, some of this, and it's trying to, not get too far out in front of yourself or far out in front of the technology. You think about what's coming. And some of it you might be thinking it's a 2-year adoption time frame or a 4-year. Some of it takes longer than that. Some of it you thought would take 2 years. I mean, look what COVID did. We've been preaching Zoom meetings with cameras on for years leading up to COVID, for years. And
Yeah,
I'm thinking, I couldn't get anyone to turn their camera on for years. And then COVID happens. I'm going, okay,
well,
I
you
guess
know,
all we needed was a pandemic.
well, the telecommuting concept has been around since the late 90s, mid
Yeah.
90s to late 90s. And everybody, I don't know about you, but we were talking about it
Yeah.
in the 2021, 2001. It
Yeah.
was,
So what are the catalysts? I mean, and that's kind of what I look at. And I say sometimes I think about technology. I'm going, you still need a catalyst to light it up. You still need something to kind of, trigger it and to get it going. And so maybe blockchain or, well, artificial intelligence for sure, but, you just think about, technologies that are coming, even 5G, kind of where are we at with that and those use cases. I still look at that and I'm going, man, some of the best stuff is yet to come. And I'm so super excited about it. But I still think about, what are going to be those kind of, tipping points that move us toward, something remarkable, where all of a sudden it's going to catch everybody's attention. I always say the best day for technology is the day you're not talking about the technology anymore, because now it's become commonplace. We're using it, we're leveraging it, and we just understand that it's bringing about a better outcome. We're not focused on it in terms of what is the technology. We're just
or
enjoying the
how it
benefits.
supposedly works or whatever.
Correct. We're just enjoying the benefits that it brings. And to me, that's a lather, rinse, repeat. You think about technology over the years, I'm not open up my computer anymore and worrying about populating, chips and, memory chips into my computer, like we were in the early days. But so we're not talking about that anymore. We see them as devices. We see them as instruments. And so, it's
Toolbox, like you said.
yeah, and it's a matter of just understanding where we're at in that process.
What do you see as, well, a couple of things. You said bring value some time back earlier. You talked about bringing value, and I mean, everything you've said obviously demonstrates that you're consistently bringing value. But how do you, when you show up, for instance, how do you see yourself in being the messenger, you're not just the messenger, but you're the co-creator as well. So what are some of the value that you feel like you are bringing, the top three or the top four?
Well, and I think about time. I think about ultimately the monetary component, accuracy, quality of outcome. So I think of any one of those touch points and say, if those are places where we have exposure, where we have a shortfall, it's taking too long, the results are inaccurate. And so even as we talked, I know our clients today, we're saying, I think accountants oftentimes, within the profession, and whether you're working in a corporate setting, you're working in a public firm, no matter, it has been a lot of paper pushing. It's been a lot of transactional. It's been a lot of compliance, not a lot of value. That is, in some respects, that has been, kind of I'll call it a legacy role, but it certainly has been a large portion of what being an accountant has been historically. And so really, in so many ways right now, we're in the middle of that, or, underway with that, this mindset of saying, we want not just a seat at the table, what are our opportunities to bring value in the context of the information that makes the organization, and it has to be real time. And because everything's happening so fast, so it can't be 15 days after month end anymore, or even longer than that. It can't be after the year end audit. I mean, this stuff we have to be surfacing this stuff every single day. It has to be actionable, it has to be accurate, it has to be timely. And that's going to then set the stage for us to have a much different kind of engagement on the part of the accountant across the rest of the organization. And it brings about the ability for us to impact kind of where the organization goes. It doesn't do us any good if if it's late, it's long. Going, that was relevant back then. I mean, that the situation's long been impacted the organization. Now, what am I in the middle of? I need to know in the middle of the firefight, not after it's kind of the damage has all been done.
I agree. Matter of fact, in my business, sometimes you don't even have the opportunity to get a computer system running to get quick enough to get the kind of information you need on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Because it's never been programmed. Nobody was using it. We have to figure out ways to make it happen. But yeah, you need, what happened yesterday is going to happen. Based on what happened yesterday in 2 days, what's going to happen today, and how do we manage that, and how do we move things around, that kind of stuff. Sometimes I think the KPIs have kind of gone the way of getting too relied on. Well, if it isn't out, then we're okay, as opposed to what's the dynamic going on, so that even if it's better, why aren't we doing something about the fact, acting on something that's better?
Well, and so that's why I think cloud is important, because cloud gives you that real-time information. Everybody's looking at the same set of data. You don't have to worry about, kind of maintaining the platform that's, kind of connecting us all together and that we're all kind of collaborating on. So I look at cloud and say that gives us the ability for that real-time information, and then it's, ultimately going to be available to us to, to start, acting upon, strategizing upon. So I think, cloud is a key part of this, but then you bring artificial intelligence into this, and then it takes it to a whole nother level, because once we've got the data, and, big data, potentially, kind of all, gathered together, that's what we're working on. Now you add a layer over the top of that for artificial intelligence, and it's going to start becoming, kind of a co-partner with me in my day job, looking for potential anomalies in the data, helping, say, well, in the past, when this, and this have happened, the next event was this. And so now all of a sudden it's giving you KPIs, dashboards, alerts, indicators saying, here are some areas of concern where you may want to focus your attention. So I look at that and say, that's a great use of technology, really kind of helping me analyze the information. And so predictive, prescriptive analytics, I know there's, terms we use for all of this, but I look at it and go, just let's help bring about, better outcomes, faster, more accurate. And, once we've got that, we've got, more accurate, foundation and, more real-time foundation. Now, all of a sudden we can say, help me now take this and guide what I do next. And so that to me is one of the neat things, we're just now starting to really start to appreciate with a lot of technology is what next. Let's leverage technology for what's next.
I'm gonna move to the future a little bit, and at the same time still focus on what you might feel you can bring to the value of the future. You've got people's like Elon Musk and Hawkins, who's now passed away, obviously, who believed that AI was a death knell in some way. That was going to be a negative to humanity, as a matter of fact. Anything relating to that as it relates to being overpowered, as opposed to being it no longer we're the tool, as opposed to it being the tool?
It's a risk. It's a genuine risk. There was a great movie that came out. It's available on the internet, called Do You Trust This Computer? And it was great. Elon Musk was one of the interviewees in the movie. There was somebody from a doctor from Cedars-Sinai, I think a professor from Cal Berkeley. And they talked about AI, and they talked about the potential, and they you go everything back to the original sci-fi Hollywood renderings of this is the way the technology has been portrayed, and this is how it came to be. And each step along the way, kind of the perception versus the reality, but you're going, okay, the perception wasn't, there's a lot of truth in that perception. There's a lot of, and you saw, and yeah, maybe some of it they didn't get right, but a lot of it they did. And so now when you think about artificial intelligence and what's the opportunity for it to go awry, and then you hear some very amazing minds, some very forward thinkers talking about artificial intelligence and the potential for misuse. And the answer is, it's like any other technology. There's always going to be opportunities to misuse it. There's always opportunities to misuse a tool as there are to use a tool. Is it so is it something that's going to, ultimately, wipe out, hundreds of thousands of jobs and, crater all sorts of things? And I look at it and go, we're a long way from any of that, because, what we know about computers is they're really good at doing repetitive tasks. They're not near as good about doing, kind of that free form, judgment, judgmental type of, processing. So, but, there's innovations being made. And so yes, there is risk. There is, I'm, so it's funny because, as I sit around maybe with some other, of my, technology colleagues, and we think about, that very subject. What if what are you excited about in terms of the future? What are you concerned about in terms of the future? And so to your point, Mark, I would say, yeah, AI does have some potential for misuse. I'm concerned about, I'm concerned about weaponization. And that's, maybe a good way to put it. But yet that's playing out already kind of today as we think about, social media. And, I think for all of us, we look at it and say, at the end of the day, I just don't want to be manipulated. I don't want to, so when I think about what I read, when I think about what I view, what I think about, what's in front of me, I want that to be accurate information so that I can take it in, I can understand it, and I can make my own judgments and discern it in my own way. If I'm concerned about anything, it's that there's too many, algorithms behind some of this that are just spoon feeding, all of us what we want to hear rather than what we need to hear, what we should hear. And so, yeah, that to me, I'm far more concerned about, the subtle aspects of that, because it's already, happening, I think, today, and it's real.
Good point. It's amazing. We see it almost every day with, almost a battleground of information, trying to discern whether, which is right, and forget right versus wrong, but what,
Yeah.
What is fact, or, and I understand about the algorithm issues of driving certain customers to certain places and certain information to the right people, or, a lot of finesse going on. That's for sure. Yeah. What about the what comes to mind the other day I saw a presentation about a book that came out that talks about our attention span. I wish I could remember the name of it, but that our attention span, the average attention span of a teenager, or I forget what the actual statistics were. I didn't think I was ever going to have to use this right away, but that it's that the younger generation, their average attention span is 1 to 2 minutes on any particular thing. And a lot of it has to do with, first of all, the flooding of information, but also that constant current stimulus of the process of information. Any thoughts about that? And and you kind of said that it almost sounds like we got to get smarter to use the smart as opposed to dumber. I mean, allowing ourselves to roll over. So
unfortunately, I don't probably have a good track record on this one. So you're probably preaching right to the choir, in terms of thinking about attention spans, and I so much of of our data streams that we interact with all day long are in bite-sized pieces. And to your point, it's not an accident, and so but I think what's so often lost, potentially, depending on the quality of those data streams, is the the bigger picture, the details, the relevant facts, the the perspective of potentially what's behind that. And so I look at it and I say, what, that creates genuine risk / concern, because I do think it's happening. So that's why I said, I think accuracy is important. I think context is important. I think thinking about data sources, trusted data sources, are important. So and whether it's accounting information or the news that we read, I mean, we look at it and say, what, if that's my 2 minutes engaging with this particular headline, fact, KPI, whatever it is, what is my confidence level behind that data source? And I think right now, that's where I'm far more skeptical that we're, we've got, the requisite level of altruism behind some of those data sources. In fact, to the contrary, I think, that's where the exposure is. It's far too easy to manipulate data sources, and data sources that we as individuals are otherwise trusting. So that there's genuine work to be done there, because I don't think it's benefiting any of us when we're overly relying on what to me are potentially suspect data sources.
One of the things that and I'm going to open, this is just one more question or one more thought, and then I'd like to see if anybody else would like to ask questions. There's a visitor here, and I'd like to make sure that they get the opportunity to ask you a question. For me, data is always important, but it's always the subtleties that tell me things about the people, what's going on in a business, how am I going to help run this business, how am I going to help come alongside them so that they can come alongside me so we can do whatever. And though data is essential and in many cases a core for the conversation, in order to be able to discuss something, we had to have some comparisons, we had to have some good data, we have to talk about it. But a lot of the subtlety that comes out of the way people react to certain situations, or the fact that they remember it they remember it in a certain different way than we might remember it, all help in getting to a place that's more creative, more more essential. So I get a little worried that we get so caught up in the data as opposed to the subtleties of the things that people say or the things that people do. And it can tell me a lot by the way an individual approaches another individual, how well a company is doing. I can go back to the data and I can, and say, okay, well, maybe we need to explore this, but why did that person pull back from that situation as opposed to go forward with that situation?
Yeah, and let's face it. I mean, again, we've all been, through this COVID journey together. I think there's been a lot of folks who've, voiced concerns about, follow the science, the data, so I think it's very top of mind, all of this, from a subject perspective, I think if anything has become clearer is what is what do clean data feeds look like, and to help so we at least have facts, so we understand what those facts are, and then from there we can have then the follow-on conversations about what do we do with that. But if there's anything that's kind of come to light is are we presenting all the facts, we're presenting some of the facts, are we presenting the facts accurately, or are those not even the facts? And so that's I think it's a good conversation to have. It's the right conversation to have, because at the end of the day, for all of us, I mean, we all move forward based upon the information we have at hand, and if that information is not reliable information, then it absolutely will change how we change our next steps. So I think it's I think it's been a very illuminating or very enlightening last 18 to 24 months that we've all been through. And so I don't, maybe I'm the glass half full kind of guy. Always I look at it and say, what have we learned from this? What's next? I know from an AI perspective, there's applications today that will go out and, you could put them, you could just put in the information, at a baseball game, it'll generate, an article for you that you could run in the, in the media. Here's what happened at last night's baseball game, and it's ready for print. And so you're putting some copywriters potentially out of business, some editors out of business. But I look at that and go, but that's kind of recapping, the factual information in a narrative form. And we have that technology today. And so I look at that and go, I'd almost rather have that feed than some of the feeds I know that are out there today, that are kind of competing for our attention. So again, I look at it and I say I think there's opportunity to really kind of understand, improve, and make certain that we all have accurate information, actionable information in front of us.
Let me, Phil, are you still there? Phil? Maybe he's not. Ann or James? I mean, I know James always has a question.
Uh-oh.
This young man I can see he's loaded up already.
Oh,
I actually made some notes here, which is
terrific.
rare for me. But yeah, thank you for giving me an opportunity because it has been super stimulating. And one of the things I just wanted to say I really appreciate was the something that my father was a engineer, and he used to talk about just 1 degree of change.
Mhm.
You know, this direction versus that direction, you end up in a different environment with different people and a completely different world, 1 single degree of change. So,
Yep.
I appreciate that you bring that sort of that perspective to this. My question halfway through this interview was when you come into an organization and you see there's this communication, this lack of communication, and you bring these walls down, so to speak, do people start fixing the problems there and of themselves once you've removed the barriers?
I would tell you, it's always the answer that you won't ever get in trouble for. It depends. And so I would say that, we always start by communicating, taking a top-down, approach for communication, always, kind of share what we've learned and what we understand, with senior management. And, from there, what our recommendations might be. And it's from there, it's, up to them to say, because they're going to have organizational awareness that we won't have, in terms of the personalities, the potential, and visions for their own organization. So we look at it and say, we'll share what we've observed. We'll provide our recommendations, which are, have, our own, collective wisdom perspective, that are, that backstop that. But, what's actionable from there is ultimately up to them.
Gotcha. Well, the other thing that impressed me was that uh, for Ann and I, the way we create value is we really don't have any clients that actually do for themselves what we do.
Mhm,
And in most cases, when it comes to analytics, it's Ann
mhm,
who comes in and sometimes just looks at a guy's business in a way he never looks at it
mhm.
because she's from outside and she's
Yeah.
looking at just the data parts. And so that's the thing that I really that's sort of my last comment question is it seems like that everybody just needs another set of eyes. Now those eyes should be, qualitatively valuable to have on,
Mhm.
but still
Otherwise,
it's
it's just an opinion, right?
yes, yes.
And who asked you? So no, I agree with you. I think it's super to have, other perspectives. And I think, when an organization is small, or maybe somebody is very entrepreneurial, they may not, have a keen sense of, the value of other perspectives. But James, to your point, I think that's an absolutely, not just helpful, but a critical, part of, any one of us being successful, is understanding that, that those other perspectives are ultimately able to give us a view of things we may never see. So I think that's a great suggestion, great recommendation.
The only thing I want to close on is that I can't wait for Mark to pull you and some other people back together on a panel on AI, because I just don't think there's enough people talking about the positive application of
Mhm.
re or re-engineering these algorithms to be of service versus to exploit, and I
Yep.
just anyway, so I'm
To me,
like I said,
it's an exciting topic. I appreciate you saying that, James. Honestly, I think it's one of the most exciting pieces of, topics and technologies we have in front of us today.
well, thank you. It's
Yeah.
been great.
So he
Appreciate you.
always comes through with those those good questions. Ann, do you want to say anything you want to ask?
Yes, David, it's been terrific listening. And as I said to you earlier, I was an early adapter for a
Mhm.
lot of newness, but I've also run some very large organizations with a lot of legacy
Mhm.
involved. And when Mr. Gadget comes along, and the fellow who's going to help us turn this ship around with some new technology, it always comes down to the actual people with their hands on the computer, not the
Mhm.
people who were in the conference room when
Mhm.
we talked about this new tech, but the people with their hands on the computer. And
Mhm.
they're not always very comfortable or appreciative or engaged in that
Mhm.
change. Can you talk about how you address that and how you help them to understand that they can create value
Mhm.
in this new environment that they're looking at as just, I know how to do this. Now I got to learn this, and
Mhm.
I don't want to.
Oh goodness, the number of times I've heard that before. So no, it's a great observation. It's a great question. And so what I would say is, and this is what I think I've learned over all the years, is you have to engage that audience early. They can't feel like, the decisions have already been made, this is being, pressed upon me. Nothing I signed up for. If you want the secret, formula for getting somebody to reject anything you want to bring in, any change you want to bring in, it's don't involve them in the process. So the flip side is involve them early, even if it's in the form of a pep rally. Here's, I think you all, have experienced some challenge. We really think it would benefit the organization and you, each of you individually to address this. Here's the approach that we're taking. Here's the resources we're working with, and rah, 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 go get them team. But we find that when we do engage with those folks early and make them feel a part of the process and really engage them as a part of the process, that their perspective there, is not, missed or, somehow or another unimportant, then when you start to have the more difficult conversation regarding change, and everybody is uncomfortable with change. I don't, it's part of human nature. We want to wake up today and do the same thing we did tomorrow because that's what we know, that's what we're comfortable with. In the IT space, and especially a space that's changed so rapidly over the years, every single day, I live in change. Our organization lives in change. That's literally, as much a part of our kind of, the foundation of the business is change as anything. And so change management, helping people get comfortable, engagement is key.
Perfect. That was really, now that I've talked about legacy though, may I ask you one more question?
Sure.
With all of your expertise of the next thing, when you look at the latest CES convention,
Mhm.
what really made you the most excited when you visited what they were offering? Or did you walk the floor this year, or did you
I
do it
did
online?
not. I did not. My daughter actually got married this right that same week. So it wasn't a difficult call. I attended my daughter's wedding instead. But no, I'm constantly immersed in the corporate announcements, the technologies, and so forth. And so no, I attended a lot of the virtual sessions, after the fact as a part of CES this year. But every year has a different focus. Some years are what I'll call evolutionary years. Some years are revolutionary years. Kind of the technologies as we see them right now, it's still a lot of evolution, because a lot of the revolution was really kind of, just, kind of the digital transformation that happened as a result of COVID. And so now you've got, products that are doubling down on some of, those trends. You've got other products that, said, nope, that's not going to work in kind of the new, paradigm. The technologies that I think are really just kind of top of mind, top of, really kind of poised to be the most impactful are, AI, blockchain. A lot of people are talking about it, but it's something that's we're still looking for some remarkable use cases to really, get that going. And I don't look at cryptocurrency as the remarkable use case for blockchain. It's interesting in its own right, but it's not, causing mass adoption of blockchain. 5G, another big one, and so that's hitting the news a lot right now. But so you think about the different manufacturers, the different publishers that are out on the floor. I still think of kind of really just kind of how to help bring about a better outcome throughout the different touch points throughout the day. I still love a lot of the Amazon technology, what they're doing with AI, with Alexa, and just kind of turning all of that into just something better day in and day out. And you think about, for each one of us, how much we now are talking to our phones, not talking to someone else on our phones, but talking to our phones and saying, look this up, schedule that, give me a timer, whatever it is. And that to me is just neat use of AI. And we continue to see that baking into more and more product.
Excellent. Thanks so much, David.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Well, David, before we leave, we always ask, we've done it, what, 6 times?
Yes.
Always ask the guest if there's something that popped out in this conversation that either surprised you or was, you went aha, or, you said something like, I never said that before, or, something that, I don't know, you discovered in the process. If it didn't, that's fine as
No,
well, but
no, actually, I will tell you, because I think about, a value podcast, and I absolutely, think this is terrific. What you're doing is outstanding. And the focus of the podcast is fantastic. So I would say, just having the conversation in and around the quality of data sources, interestingly enough, for me was something that, the quality of, like I said, data streams and data sources, outstanding. And I like to go, yeah, that's true, not just for the debits and credits, but that's true for, just the other information we're all, subjecting ourselves, ingesting each and every day. So you helped me kind of articulate something that maybe has been kind of bubbling in the back, and kind of helped me kind of bring it into the same context I think about from a financial perspective.
well, thanks. I know sometimes when I'm public speaking, stuff comes out of my mouth and I go, that wasn't what I was going to say.
Where did that come from?
Where did that come from?
Yeah, it gives you a chance to chuckle at yourself. That's good.
Yeah, well, we're self-education,
Yes, in real time.
David, this was fabulous. Thank you very much. And
Thanks, Mark. I really appreciate the opportunity. Really do.